Hi, Devin. You and I share a similar audience, and this is why I wanted to invite you onto our channel today to talk about Social Security. So, you know that in the Medicare universe, my clients have to make decisions about whether to go on Medicare at 65 or to delay those benefits and save on premiums. And that's so confusing for people because of the various moving parts of Medicare and how they can coordinate with employer insurance. But when it comes to Social Security, I am generally lost and in awe of your expertise. So please tell everybody a little bit about yourself and why you've become a master at Social Security.
Well, first, thank you, Danielle, for having me on. You're right. I think there's a lot of synergy. It's an overused word, I know, but between what we do, you help people with Medicare, I help people with Social Security, and I get questions on Medicare all the time, and I'm perplexed, just completely perplexed when I get some of these questions, and so I'm thankful to have someone out there like you that I can turn these questions over to. For me, I don't really know why Social Security has become my thing, because I'm not a person that generally gets into a lot of detail on a lot of things. But several years ago, there was an event that happened, and I still remember it vividly, where someone came to me and asked me a question about Social Security, and it made me realize that, Devin, you don't know as much about this program as you probably should, especially since you're helping retirees plan for their retirement. It lit a fire in me that hasn't gone out to this day, and now it's been almost 10 years since that happened. In fact, just earlier this month, we passed our 9-year mark when I had my first Social Security workshop, and I can't believe it's been that long. But it's crazy because it's still the thing that gets me out of bed in the mornings. Knowing that, hey, I've discovered something new about Social Security. I want to get up and I want to create an article. I want to create a video. I want to let people know what I've learned here. And a lot of it is just that. As I'm learning, I'm just letting my audience know what it is I've learned. I'm trying to simplify it so they're not perplexed, and they can get every dollar in benefits that they deserve.
Yeah, and I love that you have a financial advisor background and you had this whole separate piece that is government part that has to be filtered into that. And so you were telling me once how you just literally dug in and you read everything you could possibly find. And then since then, you've created so much great content for all of the people out there. We have your blog, which is amazing. I know you have a course, which we'll talk about later. You've written a book about Social Security. And it's so funny to me that questions still come up where I have to figure something out on this, and I turn to you and you know the answer. And if you don't know the answer, you go and find it for us, which I love about that.
Yeah, well, listen, questions still come up that I don't know the answer to fully. We just started a call-in show not long ago on YouTube, and here I am 9 years into this, and I'll have to admit, every time before I hit record and I see all those calls lined up in the queue, I'm scared. Because I think someone's going to ask me a question and I'm going to falter. I'm either not going to hear a nuance that they tell me and I'm going to give them incorrect information, or they're just going to ask me a question. I don't know the answer to
it. Yeah, and they'll stump you.
Right. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Just since we've started doing this call-in show, I've had to go back to some of my contacts who know about various areas of the program and say, now, wait a minute, walk back through this, because I thought I understood this is the way the earnings test works, but here's what I'm hearing. And so being able to talk to these people has been so valuable, because they're giving me the feedback and saying, this is the way it actually happened, instead of, well, I read the rules and this is the way it's supposed to happen. So it's been very interesting. And I don't know that it's ever a system that I'll fully learn and know everything about.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're not the only one that feels like that, because I do a lot of radio shows where people will call in and I feel the same. Like, I'm such an expert in Medicare and I feel like I know everything, but it just never fails. Someone will throw out a question that's never occurred before, or they'll hear that I'm a Medicare expert and they call in with a Social Security question. And I have to explain to them that that's a whole other animal out there that I'm not as much of an expert in as I really would like to be. So glad to have this friendship with you and be able to reach out out to you. And in a recent conversation, we were talking about that the question that we both get most often when it comes to Social Security is all about when to file for Social Security. So tell me a little bit about when someone is approaching the age 62, sometimes they don't know when they should file for Social Security or Medicare, and they get all of that kind of confused. So tell me, what is some of the common things that people come to you with when they're trying to make that decision?
Well, sometimes when they come to me, they automatically think that my response is going to be delay as long as you can. And that's not what I always tell people.
Okay,
Sometimes
interesting.
that makes sense, but there is a difference in maximizing your Social Security benefit and optimizing your Social Security benefit. There's a big difference there. You know, if we're just looking to maximize, and that's looking at Social Security in its own little vacuum, in its own silo, saying, how can I and maybe my spouse get the highest amount of benefits over our life expectancy? You know, if we add up those cumulative benefits that have been paid, those checks we've received, what strategy can we use to get the highest dollar amount? That's not always the best way to look at it. Instead, you have to look at your other assets, your other resources, and figure out, how do you get the most in net benefits? Because the way that you start taking those benefits can impact how much taxes you have to pay on those benefits. And that's really where the optimization comes in on it, is making sure that you have a strategy in place that's going to reduce the taxation of those benefits. Because at the heart of Social Security taxation, it's a means test, right? But there's ways to work that means test where you get to keep more of those dollars in your pocket. It may be that you file for Social Security and you delay some of the distributions from your retirement accounts, or in reverse, it's probably the more common strategy if you're trying to lower the taxes on Social Security. Because when they look at the way taxes are calculated, they're looking at a number called provisional income. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but the gist of it is they count all of your income plus 1/2 of your Social Security. And so if we can get all of that other income lower and that part that's only counted as half higher, then you should pay less in tax. Now, it doesn't work for everyone, because some people have so much income that they'll just never be able to get that amount down. Some people, they don't have anything except for Social Security, and for them, they're not going to pay any taxes on it. Not now, at least. As benefits continue to increase, we'll eventually get to the point where even an individual that only collects Social Security is going to have to pay taxes, but that's down the road a ways. So there's a lot to think about when you're trying to figure out how you optimize those benefits, instead of just saying, what's the strategy to get the most I can?
Yeah, I love what you're saying about that, because I see that in our own Facebook group that we have for Medicare when people are discussing Social Security. And a lot of the advice that they give each other is, oh, you should wait as long as possible. And I know just from working with you this many years that that's definitely not always the case. So let's start with some of the basics, just for folks that are watching and maybe just beginning to dive into this. And tell us about full retirement age, what that is, and why it varies for different people.
Okay. So full retirement age was at its heart a cut to Social Security benefits. But they made this cut because the life expectancies were increasing. So in the original Social Security Act, the full retirement age was set at age 65. But in 1983, there were a lot of amendments made to Social Security. There were a lot of changes in those 1983 amendments. One of those was increasing full retirement age. And so what they did is they took 6 months and they increased full retirement age from age 65 to 66. And then they left them alone for 11 years. And now they've started to increase again. So if you were, most of our listeners are going to fall into this group. We won't worry about the people born before 1943 because they're already on benefits. They've made their decisions and they're living their retirement life now. But if you're born between 1943 and 1954, full retirement age is 66. For every year after 1954, that full retirement age increases by 2 months, all the way up until birth year 1960 and forward, at which point it's set at 67. Now, currently, there's no law in place that's going to increase it beyond 67, but that's certainly one of the options that's on the table to help fix Social Security, because the longer they can wait, or the longer they can push that full retirement age down the road, that does a couple of things. Number one, for people who are, say, they're going to file at 62 anyway, right? Earliest eligibility age. Well, if the wider the gap between age 62 and full retirement age, the more those benefits are reduced.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the same on the other one, the narrower the gap is between full retirement age and age 70, the less they have to give you in delayed retirement credits. So when they raise that full retirement age, it effectively lowers the amount that the Social Security Administration is going to have to pay out. Now, you could have changing life expectancies that just screw that whole thing up. But increasing the full retirement age, I think, is one of the options that they're looking at.
Yeah, and they'll probably have to, because we hear all the time, and especially after the pandemic and the trillions of dollars that the government has gone through in battling that, and a new budget that they're coming out with, or working to approve that again is trillions of dollars. We know that these entitlement benefits just aren't going to remain the same as they are today. And that's scary for a lot of people, but it's something that, we really can't necessarily forecast. So I know that we have to kind of go with the information that we have today. So thinking of that along that, what are the considerations that a worker who is approaching age 62 should think about when it comes to deciding when to file? One of the things I was so surprised at when I took the National Social Security Advisor course was that when you take it early, that benefit is permanently reduced. But that's just one piece of figuring that out. So what are the considerations that you like to share with your own clients and followers?
So, and I want to answer that question. Let me go back for just a moment, if I could, and let's talk about Social Security changes. I think it's one of the reasons that I have seen my channel grow is that a lot of consumers out there, they are aware that Social Security is likely going to change. I mean, we're facing a deficit, right? Social Security Trust Fund is scheduled to be depleted by 2034. We still don't fully know what impact the pandemic is going to have on that trust fund. We had less paid in payroll taxes in a year. It's just, there's a lot that's unknown right now. We could have inflation, which is going to drive up the amount of benefits that have to be paid out. We're going to know what those are soon. And maybe even by the time this video is released, that number is going to be out there. But we're expecting 5-6% range if inflation doesn't cool off, which this last report did show some cooling. But, I want to stress to people that we don't need to have an overly optimistic attitude about Social Security. Do I think it's going to be there for most people who are preparing to retire? Absolutely. But Danielle, for people our age, I'm not so sure. I'm just not so sure, because just because it's been there in the past doesn't mean that it's going to be there in the future. And there are some people, on YouTube and in blogs that's taking that position. Nothing's going to happen to Social Security. It's there. You have an entitled right to it, but you don't have a right to it. You absolutely do not. On every Social Security statement you get, it has in bold print at the bottom that Congress has made changes to the system in the past and they reserve the right to do so in the future. Something to that effect. That's paraphrasing. But they absolutely can make changes to the system. And so that's why I tell people, listen, your channel, Danielle, people need to follow your channel. They need to subscribe because they need to keep up with the changes that are happening to these entitlements. My channel, where we talk almost exclusively about Social Security. When those changes come out, we talk about them. Now, again, I don't think it's anything that's going to affect someone who's getting ready to retire now. But as you see, just from the changes to full retirement age, where they raised them up slowly and then left them alone for 11 years and then raised them up slowly. Most of the Social Security changes take years to fully develop. And that's because they don't want to make their voter base mad. They want to kick it down the road and say, hey, we'll let this affect someone else.
Of course.
We're going to go ahead and be able to count this into the actuarial balance of the trust fund. So I do think changes are coming. And I think that individuals need to be aware of what some of those changes are. All right. Now, back to your question on filing. So if you look at the data that's coming out of filing, nearly a third, and it may be slightly over that, of individuals just file at 62. Now, that's, that it's the earliest eligibility age. And I get it. They're maybe not working now, and they go, there's a check there waiting on me. And, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? I'd rather get what I can while I can. And some people are even using the pending demise of Social Security as rationale for filing. And I don't really think that makes a lot of sense. But there's some of this fear that is driving those people to make those kinds of decisions. But you're right, it is a permanent reduction. Now, I'm not saying that it never makes sense to file early, because there are some cases where it does make sense. But what you've got to realize is that in most cases, if you have a couple, if you look at the stats from Social Security, the male is going to be the higher earner and the female is going to be the lower earner.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Also, the female is going to live longer than the male, possibly by years, depending on the age differences. So that higher earner, his benefit is going to become her benefit when he dies. And so by filing at 62, he's permanently reducing the amount of survivor benefits that his wife's going to be able to receive.
Wow.
And I've seen lots of wives almost impoverished because their husband made a stupid decision about Social Security.
Yeah.
To just get what they could while they could, and they didn't put any more thought into it. So filing while keeping survivor benefits in mind, I think, is one of the critical decisions that you have to make. But again, there are some good reasons to file at 62. So for example, if you need the income, I was talking to someone the other day, and they, it was on the call-in show yesterday when we were recording, and they said, well, Devin, I'm still working, I'm full retirement age, but I need the income from Social Security. I've got bills I can't pay with the job that I have. What do I need to do about Social Security? Well, it's pretty simple. You need to file. And the same works if you're 62, you've retired and you need the income, but there's not a whole lot of strategy to employ here. You just need to file for benefits. If there's another way to satisfy those retirement income needs, then maybe you need to try to get it somewhere else. But for some people, that's it. And in that case, there's not a whole lot of strategy. Another one is if you're single and if you're in poor health, then maybe you need to file early and get what you can while you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be one of the only times that I recommend a break-even analysis, where you look at, okay, if I file at 62 and I collect a lower benefit, or if I wait until full retirement age and collect a higher benefit, at what age will those benefits, the total household benefits that I've collected, intersect? And, in many cases, that's in your 70s, 78, 79. And so if someone's in poor health and they're probably not going to live that long, then it may make sense to file earlier. Another one is if you have minor children at home. I've seen a lot of people who have continued working, delaying their Social Security out till 70, and they have a minor child at home. Either that, or they have what we call an adult disabled child, someone who became disabled before the age of 22. Well, those individuals are eligible for 50% of your full retirement age benefit when you file for benefits, but you've got to file first.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may be kicking the can down the road and getting yourself a higher benefit, but you may be missing all of those months of that children's benefits, and maybe even a child in care benefit if you have a spouse at home who's helping to take care of that child and they are under the age of 62, or under full retirement age technically. So those are certainly some considerations. And then there's a few spousal considerations too. If your spouse is the lower earner, then you've got to think about the survivor benefit that we talked about earlier. Now that's technically why you would want to delay your Social Security. But if your spouse is the lower earner and let's say they're in poor health, well, they may not live long enough to get your survivor benefit, which means that they may just need to get a spousal benefit for as long as they can before they pass away. That was the exact reason why I told my own mom that she needed to file, after my dad filed. She was given a terminal diagnosis. And then, if your younger spouse is is older than you and they're the lower earner, well, that spousal benefit can't be paid until you file.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is that spousal benefit doesn't increase after full retirement age. And so if, let's say that they're 5 years older than you, your full retirement age is 67, but you're 62 now, and your wife is 67. Well, they're going to, if you wait until full retirement age, that's going to be 5 years where they didn't collect a spousal benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you have to look at the situation and, what's the amount of cumulative household benefits we can get, and not just how do I increase my benefit the most. But there's no question, it is a very complex process to figure it out. It's not the do-it-yourself project that a lot of people think it is. It is something that it needs either someone who is extremely knowledgeable to help you, or software that can analyze a lot of this.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's the same way when people come to us and they have Medicare decisions to make. There's just things that they could decide that will permanently affect their ability to get certain types of Medicare supplemental products. And people need to realize that same thing about Social Security. And what you said about the family benefit and the spouse benefit, it's important also for people to know that doesn't necessarily reduce what you take home. So when you have someone in your family who could be collecting, it's not coming out of your own benefit, correct? Because we have had some people a few times in our Facebook group want to know how much of their check that their wife is, their ex-spouse or their ex-husband is going to get, and how much it's going to reduce what they take home. And so that's kind of the comical one. But on the non-funny side, it's important for people to know that if they did have an opportunity for a family benefit, that doesn't mean that the family member is taking away from their own future benefits, right?
Absolutely. That is absolutely right. There is the family benefit maximum, which is going to limit the amount that can be paid to the total family members. But
yeah,
that primary earner is always going to get their full benefit for the given age they file before those benefits are paid out to the beneficiaries, the other beneficiaries on their record.
Yeah, very good. Another thing we get a lot of questions about is the file and suspend that, of course, was phased out some years ago, but some people may still qualify for the restricted application based on their birthday. So can you explain to the viewers what that is?
Well, there's not too many people out there now who haven't filed who still qualify for that. You had to be born before January 1 of 1954. Well, before January 2nd of 1954 to be able to use that strategy, unless you have a survivor benefit.
Okay.
So when those rules changed, it did not change for survivor benefits.
Interesting. Okay.
So let's say, for example, that you are 60, which is the age of early eligibility for survivor benefits, and your spouse has passed away. Depending on the benefit amount, it could make sense to file for a survivor benefit only, and then you collect that survivor benefit all the way up until age 70, at which point your benefit has been there in the background just growing. And now that benefit is potentially 75% higher than it was at 62, and you can switch over to your own benefit. We looked at a case just a couple of days ago for a guy who was going to do this exact strategy, and his benefit was going to be $580 something difference for doing that.
Wow.
That's a big difference in retirement.
Yeah, we see people all the time that fall into that category of, I think the statistic is like 40% of folks who are retired workers who are taking Social Security rely on that for 90% of their income. Yeah. So often, even if they can get $100 or $200 difference in benefit, it's welcome, but 500 something, that would be huge. And so it does just kind of reinforce the need for people to study this, read ahead of time, work with someone who knows what they're doing, make sure that you don't go into it blindly. I'm curious to know, in all the years of people coming to you with these decisions, even after they hear about their choices, would you say that more people still take benefits at 62, or do they hold out for those delayed retirement credits? Is there a trend in people starting to learn more about the reasons they should consider all of these factors?
I would like to think, I haven't seen any data, I would like to think that people are making smarter decisions simply because I believe in people doing smart things. But the recent data that I have seen, which is not all that current, doesn't really support that, unfortunately. It is still saying that most people just file for their benefits as soon as they can. So a third of them are filing at 62. And then a lot of them who aren't filing at 62 simply aren't filing because they're still working. And they would hit that earnings test that applies if you're less than full retirement age.
That's right.
But by the time you get up to full retirement age, something like 80% have already filed. So you're only seeing the other 20%. And I'm not sure of that exact number.
Yeah.
That's close. It's approximate. That make a decision to file after that time. And again, I'm not saying that it's always right to file later, but it certainly can be a beneficial decision for a number of reasons.
Yeah. And you may just not know that. So it really comes down to when to file for Social Security is so individual and is really very personal to your situation, whether you have family, whether you have a spouse or an ex-spouse, whether life expectancy for your spouse may go beyond your own life expectancy and how that's going to affect them later. Right. So very individual, and everyone needs to know that it's not just a canned one hit decision, that you need to think of all the different factors and don't take that decision lightly. So knowing that everyone does need to make an individual life decision about this, I like to just mention a couple of things that I know that you offer. So really excited to see your new podcast, The Devin Carroll Show. I love to listen to financial podcasts on my way to and from work, because I think it's just a great way. And I was just thinking about all the workers that are in their early 60s who could listen to your show in a similar fashion and be kind of absorbing some of this information earlier. But I'm more excited about the new workshop that you've put together on how to choose the right time to file for Social Security. So can you talk a little bit about that and how folks can find you and sign up for that?
Yeah, the easy way to find that is just go to devincarroll.com. Right there on the homepage, you're going to see the registration page for that. It is a free webinar that's out there. This free workshop. It's about 45 minutes long, so you're going to need to carve out a little bit of time to sit down and watch it. But in that workshop, I go through what I think are the most important factors to think about when you're going through this filing decision. And I think that there's some information in here that may trigger something that you haven't thought of before. Now, also in there, I go into much more detail into why it may be smart to file at the earliest age too. We kind of touched on that earlier. So there's a number of things that we answer in this workshop, but the most important thing is we try to give you all the information you need to make a good decision, because here's the deal. You get a year to undo your filing strategy. 1 year. After that, it's pretty much an irrevocable decision that you've made. So you've got to make this decision right, and you need to get it right the first time. Because if you don't, it's not going to only affect your benefit, but it's also going to potentially impact your spouse's benefit. And if you have kids at home that should be getting a benefit, it'll affect them as well.
Yeah. So and go ahead.
The free workshop is just devincarroll.com. You sign up there. It is a revolving workshop that we have up there. So just take some time, set it aside, watch it. The reviews that we've gotten on this thing so far have been fantastic. And I don't even know how many people have been through this, but it's been thousands of people so far. And we're getting ready to update that for the new year. So I don't know what version is going to be up by the time this airs, but so don't hold me to that 45 minutes. It may be longer by the time you watch it.
Yeah, I think 45 minutes is actually pretty short considering the ground that you would need to cover there. And I also like to mention, for those of you who are concerned about the changes coming into Social Security, Devin has a great YouTube channel where I feel like you do some really good discussion about that. So let's say you're someone a little bit younger and you're in your 50s and this decision is out in front of you a ways, and you want to know what kind of changes we might encounter. Going to Devin's YouTube channel is a phenomenal way to kind of stay current with all of that information. We referred several people to the workshop, Devin, and we got great feedback on it from them. Like, I just feel like now the Social Security questions, I'm just like, here you go. You can go on over there and take this little workshop and you'll learn some of the basics you need to know. So really appreciate your friendship and just the wonderful content that you put out there for the viewers that are in the same audience, yours and mine. Is there any last parting words that you'd like to leave the audience with about Social Security?
Just make an informed decision. Don't take the time to make an informed decision. When I say it's not a do-it-yourself project, there's a lot of information out there that you can get on your own to make this, but just take the time to get that data, to get that information, to read on it. This is going to be an important part of your retirement income stream. So just take the time to treat it with the respect it deserves.
Yeah, I agree. And while you're doing that for the Social Security side, do the same thing on the Medicare side, because you may be surprised to learn that that Social Security check is going to be reduced by the amount that you're going to pay for Medicare Part B. So it's important for you to know that as well. If you're going to start early, you can do the research. And then we find people when they're really aging into their eligibility for Social Security and later Medicare, they're going to make better decisions, less panic decisions, because you're not trying to learn all this in a crash course at the last minute, but you've given yourself time to study the great content that is available for you out there, like Devin offers. So Devin, again, I'm so grateful to have you here. You can find Devin's work at devincarroll.com. Go and check out his workshop, and then come and join us in the Medicare Q&A Facebook group for Boomer Benefits and let us know how you enjoyed it. We'd love to hear. Thanks much, Devin. See you soon.
All right. Thank you, Danielle.
Bye.